Welcome back, my friends, to another wonderful episode of the Cannabiz Conversations podcast. I am, as always, your grateful host, Sean Welsh. As is customary this season, our friends at Fat Nugs Magazine are our sponsor. We love them for that. We are grateful. If you have not seen Fat Nugs, this is artwork. This is people telling a story of everyone in this industry, from legacy folks that join us today, equity folks, mom and pop shops. Nobody really can support you out there right now like Fat Nugs can, as far as getting your message out to people and to the right people, the people who care. If you're not already involved with them as a retail and brand partner, get involved. I'm telling you right now, you want to be there. Also, new work they're coming up with, the employee part they're doing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, ask Dustin. He'll tell you all about it. Let's get into today's guest. Anyone who's watched the show knows Sean finds his guests because Sean's an online creep who watches people and tell their stories. And so I've been doing this for a long time in the background. I've been watching Jesse and his story. Jesse Duncan, how are you today, man?
I'm doing awesome, buddy. Big fan of the show and stoked to be here. And I would second the shout out to our friends at Fat Nugs, Dustin, Nick, Crawdaddy, the whole team over there, absolutely crushing. Heart for the movement, heart for people. And so, yeah, get behind those guys. They're killing it.
That's why we love our live reads, people. You people wonder why I do it. It's because of reasons like that, because people have comments, and we love to see our brand supported that way because they deserve it. That's why they're here, because we want to partner with them. That's the whole goal here. So you talked about being a fan of the show. I thank you for it. I've been a fan of yours for quite a while. We do this. This is how we start the show, Jesse. So tell us, man, what is the origin story? Where does it all begin for Jesse and this beautiful plant?
For sure. So, born in NorCal up in Humboldt, so kind of the heart of the Emerald Triangle, child of the 80s and 90s. And as we transitioned into high school, we found ourselves kind of mingling with new friends, new friend groups. And we went out one night and the guys were like, hey, we're going to get some beer and a doobie. And myself, my two besties had never done either of those things. And, a love affair was essentially born. We smoked a joint. I just remember laughing hysterically and really, really enjoyed that experience. Fortunately, up in Humboldt, weed is around, and it has been, ever since I was sort of formally introduced to it. You could go up to the Arcata Plaza, you could literally sit down, chill for 2 minutes. Somebody would roll by, hey, what do you guys shopping? And you could get, your hands on really good stuff. Like I literally smoked Thai once, Mexican brickweed once, and other than that, my experience with cannabis is good green bud grown right out of the triangle.
I mean, talk about an origin story. One of our guests, I'm trying to think of who it was. I can't remember who it was, but their first origin story was like, yeah, I did it in Amsterdam, first time ever. And that was a good one. But what I like about yours is, as a Midwest kid, right? That's where we got the finest of the fine from, right? So you're talking about channels that would bring it from there to there. Also a child of the 80s and 90s. And so seeing that sort of blow up and have that be the case, right, and watching it, to be that close to it, right, to be involved in it is really cool. I've only heard stories about the plaza. I've never actually been there. My only experience with plaza-like environment was when I was in Vancouver. And I saw a dude in the middle of a park, and he just had a gigantic sack out. He was crushing on all of it, just rolling dupes. So I was like, hey man, can I, can I pour in? He's like, no, this is mine. But if you go here, walk past the ATM, you'll hear these two words. If you hear green and white, just stop and tell him what you need. Jesse, this transaction happened. My wife and my best friend kept walking. I was able to catch after them before the next block. I mean, we literally turned green or white, green, 25, 50, 50, boom. Like I barely broke stride. This whole thing was over, dude. And we were down the road. That's what I've heard about the plaza, just being a place where you can do all that. Jesse, did you say you were in high school when this happened? That was your age there?
Yeah, I started when I was 15. And, frankly, and our message to our own children, of which there are 6, has always been, listen, get to the age of maturity, get to 18, let yourself develop mentally and sexually and such. And then make those life choices. Because we had access to really good weed, it was a bit disruptive for me, bud. And I'm not going to bullshit. I really do believe that cannabis is good on average. I think it helps, saves, improve lives. I'm very passionate about all that. I've seen it firsthand. But I also know that it can be disruptive as you build tolerance and things. So, I had a bit of a rocky run there for a year or two with my grades slipping and my energy levels and such. And it wasn't really until I built up a tolerance that I could get back to being a straight A student and doing all those things. So I would say it was a little young. And our message is wait.
That seems very timely in my own life because having conversations. My wife and I, I'm a daily user for I don't know how old am I, and so it's whatever. It's been a long time, probably 30 years, and I don't really think of it contextually like that. Like someone had said to me, she had even said to me, she's like, well, we have a problem with these certain people because they just show up drunk all the time. She's like, but you show up high everywhere we go, every moment of every day. How is it any different? I thought to myself, don't compare weed to alcohol. Like that's bullshit. I won't have this conversation, but reality is vice is vice. Addiction is addiction. I know no one wants to hear weed's not this, weed's not that. Dude, it's a drug. Drugs are addicting. Plain and simple. There's no it's a reality. So I'm not a parent, but I love to hear that perspective, Jesse, because it seems fair, to say, hey, did it? You're probably going to run up against it, but you should try to do your best to get to 18 because that's when you'll be able to really decide what you want to do and where you want to go. Talk to me about when you built tolerance, you come out of this kind of destructive thing, as you call it, right? And you go back into the straight A's. What's the genesis for that? Do we want to call it a cannabis rock bottom? I don't want to over dramatize the situation, but how do you want to play that?
It was just smoking more weed, frankly, early on, and even in your life, if you go an entire day without smoking and you take a hit at 7 p.m., you're going to be pretty blasted versus had you been doing that periodically throughout the day, it's the norm. So frankly, it was just about building that up through use. I got my reps in, I was able to build that up and frankly, lived a very productive life for, like you said, a couple decades, smoking weed 8 times a day.
Yeah, and I take pride in it, and I know people are like, well, that's not a badge of honor. I'm like, bullshit. I hear so much stereotype about cannabis and laziness, dude. Some of the wealthiest people I know are stoners. It's not even close. It's something that if I compare it to how I feel on alcohol, look, I've said on the show many times, I am an aholic of all of them. Okay, every single one of them. I have a fucking problem with gambling, drugs, you name it. I aholic it. Work, moderation is the key to my life. It always has been. And so in this conversation with my wife, she challenged me basically to say, well, then the only thing you don't have moderation in is your cannabis use. And I thought, damn it. Damn it. She's right. She's right. So now as you're older, right, Jesse, what is the use habit now as how do you engage in the plant use today?
Yeah, occasional, honestly. At about age 40, I'm 46 now, something in my biochemistry shifted a bit to where all of a sudden the very same thing I had been doing that I found really quite energizing. So for me, I smoke in cannabis, I'm ripping, I'm racing.
Yeah.
I want to go for a walk. I'm in the yard. Let's go to the gym. Let's go play golf.
Yeah.
But it got to a place where that was different for me. And I started to, without it, I started to feel kind of a sense of anxiety, a sense of unrest, to where I felt like something in my system was different. And so honestly, it took me a minute. I phased out. That was a very uncomfortable process for me. I felt went through a physical transformation, some nausea, some irritability, and inability to sleep. But remind you, I was, a very, very, very heavy user when I decided to fade out. And now it's occasional edibles. It's a hit. It's topical use. I'm a real believer in topical for localized pain. And so, yeah, I'm pretty mellow nowadays. Most of the weed that we grew, we gave away last year. But I just really enjoy the process and still do find, quite therapeutic.
Yeah, when my wife and I were growers in the medical scene in Colorado, we were in the state of Colorado, you'd obtain permits to grow on behalf of people who couldn't afford or do for themselves. But a part of that obligation was to provide them, with free cannabis, which only seems right as far as systematically goes to me. I enjoyed that system. So when we got involved in that, You started to see people really have the appreciation. And my wife and I, we enjoyed the process as well. My wife was a cloner queen. My buddies told her she'd have a 50% kill rate. Turns out she had like a 10% kill rate. So I ended up with like 140 plants. And she's like, well, we can't kill anything. So like, I'm sorry, we're just going to figure this out. And I'm like, okay, well, can you slow down what you're doing? I have permits for just about, whatever. But you're able to really, I would recommend anyone get the chance to be able to home grow, Jesse. And we've talked about on the show as citizens of this great country, that we should have at minimum right to be able to home grow. I assume you agree with this sentiment, sir.
Huge believer. Home grow is a universal right, is the way that I like to put that. I think that all adults worldwide should have the ability to both consume and cultivate cannabis freely. And as a commercial cultivator, my opinions are never different. That the connectedness, the ability to provide the type of medicine that you specifically like, grow it in the way that you like, it's magical. For me, it was age 17. I found a bag seed. My parents, were kind of cool with things. I didn't realize at the time that my father was still an under the table sort of weekend consumer my entire life. I just didn't know it. Mom stopped when she started making babies, but I found a seed. They let me grow it at home, and dude, fell in love with that fucking plant. I mean, I knew nothing. I had a 2-gallon pot, like the little shady corner. I get like a couple hours of light. I bring it into my bedroom every night. Like I coveted this thing, but it set me on a path, and then literally yearly until 2002 I would just grow a small garden on the side of the hill. Unfortunately, that year the neighbors ratted me out because they saw me dragging one of the plants up into the drying barn, and then the cops came. I got arrested, and it kind of put a damper on things for a minute. And I think I took maybe 2 seasons off before getting back into it. So essentially, since 1995, cultivation's been a major part of my world. And only 11 of those years, quasi 14, because 3 was pure, illicit market, but only 14 of those years were commercial. So a whole lot of time as a hobbyist grower for personal use. And so I'm super passionate about that.
Dude, I love that. So the home grow cultivation part, I have a lot of passion for as well, because it's something that when you do it right, the first time you do it, you if you don't fall in love with it, then you won't come back. I believe that, but doing the whole thing right, and not just growing it, but trimming it, hanging it, drying it, making it, that way. I used to joke to people, yeah, it grows on trees, but it don't end up like you see it, right? And that's not how this is. We had the joke, people only come by once, for trimming sessions. They would never come back for the next season of trimming. Even with all the free weed they got, they still were like, nope, I am super good on that tedious task. But even then, yeah, I wake up like this. I smoke weed to get me to come down, because otherwise people think I'm on speed everywhere I go. I don't use caffeine. This is just my life. This is the passion I have for the things around me, for breathing the air I breathe, right? So when you do that, you have to sort of find a way to like manage expectation, and nothing will quiet the mind like trimming a plant, checking a trichome through a microscope. You know what I mean? Like that true passion. So dude, you're doing this 17, 18, 19. You get arrested. You go to jail or just get arrested?
Yeah, it was an in and out within a day or two. I was out. Fortunately, mom worked for an attorney as a paralegal, so I was able to get out of there. But then I had to do a Prop 36 deferral program, which is a 6-month drug treatment program, which was a real drag for multiple reasons. I was in college. It was very, very disruptive. My fingerprints ended up getting flagged the first time I actually got a real job. They tried to get rid of me because of that. It became a whole nother legal battle just to keep a position, because they couldn't hold Prop 36 against you. So that was a drag. And frankly, that's what kept me out of the commercial market, because as I was finishing up my college degree, I got hit in 02. I was going to Humboldt State. By 04, I graduated. Now people are really making money up in the hills. Camp stopped flying largely in 02. People started blasting these big greenhouse sets and these big outdoors. I knew friends from Soham that are like, dude, come down. The water's warm, like the getting's good. And my wife's like, dude, that or your family, like you choose. So I'm like, I'll go to work. And I became a financial advisor, did that for 10 years. until mom got sick with cancer a second time. And she was just getting totally strung out. Pharmaceuticals, liquid morphine, nausea meds, like all of it. And I'm like, dude, it's done. She needs cannabis. And so I retired from financial advising, actually transitioned my entire base over to another advisor and started growing weed for mom and other terminal patients.
Dude, incredible. So you are how old? Where update us on the timeline. I was telling my wife we're watching a
This
documentary.
was, I started to do it on the DL in 2010, formal break from advising 2014.
2014. So you really shifted your life in that way, decided to sort of recommit, if you will, to the background, to the way that you've done things. What do you do? Where do you go? Do you start big? Do you start on your own? How do you
No, I
re-jump
mean,
start
I
your
started
world?
out as a largely a medical grow. I had a limits exemption permit of my own, which allows you to grow 99 plants. We got one for mom, so I could double that up and have 99. And then just literally wired up, started at 4 lights, ultimately grew it to 16 plus a bedroom and a clone op. And so the getting was pretty good. Mom passed, honestly, shortly after all of this really got growing, which was tragic. I told my wife, formally outed myself because the first couple runs were on the DL, dude. I'd go in, I was growing in the morning, I'd shower, I'd put on my suit, I'd go to the office, like come home. She had no clue. And it was in the basement of mom's place, right? And then after she passed, I said, this is bullshit. I'm not going to hide who or what I am. I let her
Yep.
know what was up. I was actually forced out of the home for 4 months, which was a really dark, depressing, lonely time. And I say this, and it might sound corny to some, but it was the pot plant. It was the cannabis plant itself that pushed me through that. Because, like you, Sean, I can spiral, dude. I can go on a bender. I can get lost in the bottle. I can do all of those things.
Yeah.
And a family really helps keep me centered.
Yeah.
And without that, I found myself in a dark way, and the garden really pushed me forward. So ended up getting home invaded a short time later. This is 2016. Very scary experience. First time I've really feared for my life, and decided that full-time outdoor needed to be my dance. I'd already done a couple of seasons in the hills working double duty. So I rally up in the hills, rally back and run the indoor. It's exhausting but profitable. But then after the invasion, I shut down the indoor and went full outdoor in 2016.
So let's talk about a couple of things there. I, you as a financial advisor kind of blows my mind, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you. My wife was the financial advisor. She was the front, the reception, the upfront, the books. She had that was her job. And when I met her, and for most of our dating lives and beginning of our married life, she did that job. While I was in the car business, and then while having both of those jobs, did cannabis, and I was working 70 hours a week running dealerships, doing what I do. It's a grind. It's a grueling industry, but I've been in it my whole life. And so I come home, man, and it was like therapy. It was like, yeah, I'll go spend 2 more hours in a garden. And you talk about family being the center. As I said earlier, I don't have kids, but my wife is the center. Without my wife, without that part of my life, all those things we talk about spiraling and the holic of all those things, that shit would have caught up with me. We wouldn't be having this conversation. And that's the true fact of the matter. She hates when I say it out loud, especially in front of people she don't know. But at the end of the day, I would not be anywhere without that centering. And so good of you to say it. 4 months, that's the dark time, dude. I travel away from the wife, and if something don't go right, or you have a misunderstanding while you're traveling away for a week, it's something I don't much appreciate. You know what I'm saying? Let alone kind of having to deal with that and being on your own. The plant, though, helps you get through it. When you get back to the grow side of the outdoor, if I remember correctly, it comes with its own risks, its own
Yeah.
its own
Yeah.
problems. Is this
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, I mean it's like amazing spiritual. It's like literally a gift from God on one hand. However, there is risk of, a home invasion, robbery, all sorts of things in enforcement. So my very first year in the hills was 2014, still running the indoor, but a buddy had gotten raided. And what a lot of farms do after they get raided is they just replant, because the likelihood of them rallying the troops again, driving up to the middle of nowhere and busting you a second time is really no. But dude, I fucking was so freaked out working on a plot that had just gotten raided. We did a term replant, but I felt like I grew up that season. It was the first time I'd really been in the hills, being up on the plot the vast majority of the time alone in nature, surrounded by a silence that was like so deafening that a branch coming down out of a tree would sound like an explosion. Like it was fucking magic. And the connectedness I felt to the plant, it only grew. Fast forward, every year I just slowly scaled. I went from 10 to 14,000 square feet to 17 to 37, 48 to 72, up to about 90 before going down and growing, 500,000. But we suffered a raid in 2020 that was like really crippling. It was devastating. It was a permitted farm. Owners got caught doing some things with some product. We lost 1,200 processed pounds and about 3,000 that we had on the vine. And so to watch your entire season get cut down right in front of you, it's devastating. The entire crew was so depressed. It was so heavy. I dipped in my pocket, paid out about 70 grand because everybody was owed a lot of money. A lot of times you get toward harvest, things are lean.
Yeah.
And I paid crew half of what they were owed, took a huge haircut personally. And that I think was one of the reasons I ultimately left Humboldt, is because it got really tough. I had 2 or 3 situations like that where I lost a lot of money. And I thought, fuck, dude, maybe I need a break. And of course, I realized, in hindsight, this is home. And despite all of those things, I love this place.
Yeah, the rating part is nothing that I've actually. As a matter of fact, in Colorado, I was within like 2 hours of one of the people we were working with. They had been raided. I had left. Whatever. That's as close as I've ever been to a raid, to any of that. But it was odd that I was there to pick up some of the plants from them. So it was a whole thing that I could have had myself involved in. And anyways, bringing in other people's plants to your grow is a terrible fucking idea. Don't ever do it.
Yes.
Even I did all the protocols and everything I could, still brought bugs into my shit, still made my life a headache. So don't even try to help people with whatever they've been doing, putting it in your own. But yeah, dude, the plant has a way of working itself through people, and seeing where it goes. And so I want to go back to something you talked about earlier, and the biomechanics and the chemistry of your 40s. I am 40. I'll be 44 this year, and so I am thinking that might be something I need to take a closer look at in my own life, only because I was a huge microdose and mushroom guy, and for just good reasons, I had to stop doing that. And I noticed that I felt differently and whatever. And I gave it a lot of credit for my own mind expansion and, how I was able to come up with these ideas as an entrepreneur. I sort of used it as my fuel, and as an alcoholic, you could find ways to make anything, seem like you're supposed to be doing it, to other people. But this plant, the biomechanic part, did you do something to figure that out? Did you is there any tips you would say, or did you go see anyone? Or did you just stop? How did that come to be unnoticed, something that you was on your radar?
As you probably can identify with, my wife had a role in that, starting to say, like, dude, you're kind of running around here like a tweaker. I was smoking so much homegrown OG topped with dry sift or keef, right? That like I was buzzing around. And she's like, dude, literally, are you fucking on something? And I'm like, I swear it's just me and my weed. And so she's like, God, you're looking beat up. You got circles under your eyes. You're just starting to look a little beat up. And I think it was just the excess. It was just that I had just so much THC in the system and coupled with age or whatever else went on internally, that it just stopped feeling the same. Yeah. That said, stopping that pattern was not easy, right? I probably tried to stop smoking for a month, and it just wasn't happening. And then finally, it's like, dude, I just got to cut it, tea break it, hard fast, break my pipe, throw my weed away, like whatever. And it was probably a 2-week adjustment. crazy nightmares. Like I'm getting pursued at night. I can't find my car. I can't get away. My punches are like forceless, like against these demonic beasts and all this crazy shit, dude. And then
All right,
it
dude, look, you're
lit.
not helping me
And
want to
then
do this, bro. I don't know. Was that a sales pitch? Because fuck,
yeah,
man. I don't want to do this. I'll just take what I'm doing. No, you're right, dude. It is about the catalyst, right? It is about the conversation from the people who are closest to us who say, hey, is this, should we, is it the same, and it's appreciated. It always is, because I think that it's been a defining part of my existence for so long that I think people just assume that it's either something I do every second of every day, or that, that is close to that. And I guess looking back at it is yeah, I think about the risks that I've taken to smoke weed, you know what I mean? In a world where they shouldn't be risks, but I do it anyways, or taking a vape on a plane. Like this is idiotic. This is so unnecessary and speaks to the addiction format of it all. But I know the industry doesn't like hearing that. Like it's, again, yes, magical plant, Jesse. We all agree, but not without its flaws and not without its problems.
yeah, and I mean it's a minority. They say what 9-10% of consumers. I have one person out of everyone I know, which would happen to be an uncle, my dad's brother, who had a similar experience where occasional use, absolutely no issue, zero problem. I take one hit every now and then, one a day, like there's zero issue. But when it becomes like an all day, everyday kind of thing, something in my biochemistry shifts, and it can lead toward dependence to where if I'm not starting my morning with that bowl load, I just don't feel right. And
Right.
as the day would wear on, it would get literally worse to where by noon, I'm anxious, I'm just not feeling right, I didn't want to eat. And so for me, it's real. That said, I know I'm a minority and I know that I can and do use and have now for 6 years, occasionally and responsibly with absolutely zero impact. Enhanced creativity, spiritual connectedness, more empathetic and loving, all of the good things. But it did turn a corner for me. And somewhere in between 35 and 40, also had a shit ton of grief in my life during that period. Lost mom, lost, the family for a while, was home invaded, scared for my family's future. Like all of that was wrapped up in this period of time.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to isolate variables, but it's what I went through, man. And nobody can take that away or argue with me about what I experienced.
No, they can't. And I wish there would be more respect for that, just in our culture in general, for the concept of how people feel to how they got there. And that, that's on both sides. Whether people agree or don't agree with people, it's not about that. It's about listening. It's about hearing. The point is it happened to you. And no one can say to you, you didn't feel that way. These are feelings. These are not facts to other people. They are your facts. But other people say they're feelings. Here's the thing. It's real. It happens. Dependency is real. Okay. I don't care what anybody says. If you wake up at 7 a.m. to start your day and you smoke a bowl, you are dependent, dude. That's just, by the way, raising a hand here on the list. Okay. Yes. A dependent guy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it's something that it's been in the last, like, literally, dude, like 3 or 4 weeks of my life that I've been having these discussions with my wife. I've been looking at these things through this lens, thinking to myself, this is just one more thing I've given an excuse for why I can be addicted to it. When I was younger, I used to say it was to deal with migraines. And it was. It got me off of this medication. It's why I loved it. But then I was just doing it all the time. My dad would be like, hey, I thought it was for the migraines. I said, yeah, I decided to be a proactive migraine sufferer and just get out ahead of it. And he was like, huh, and that was then, right? That was 20 years ago. And so, yeah, it's crazy, dude. It's crazy. Thank you for sparking that discussion here today, man. That is really important for people to hear, and to know about cannabis journey, that you can still be connected to the plant. You can still grow weed. You can still work in cannabis. You can still be all things cannabis, but it doesn't mean that it has to be a daily use or even, a month. It doesn't matter the use. It matters the appreciation for the plant, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think there's another layer to this, which is I understand why a lot of people don't want to have this conversation. Let's not forget, weed still is not legal. We are still in the fight. The movement is real. We are looking to destigmatize, to normalize, and all these things. And so I feel, though, that without acknowledging that other side of the coin, it's actually a disservice because there's people either on the far right or the evangelical crowd or whoever that doesn't really agree with cannabis. They know either through anecdotal or story or whatnot or some research that it's not all shits and giggles. And so I think that we need to be upfront about that. We need to just share experiences candidly. I can still believe that cannabis saves and improves lives. I can still advocate for cannabis vociferously while acknowledging that for me, smoking hash 10 times a day just doesn't.
Again, what a fair way to end the first half. I don't know if we jump tracks to what you want to talk about in the second half, but what is it that you want to talk about in the second half, Mr. Jesse Duncan?
Yeah, this isn't a mystery now, but operating in cannabis has gotten a lot tougher. We know the competitive forces, scale, and all the like is real. So I want to just share a few insights for both cultivators and for retail operators that I think can help them be successful. So that's what I'd like to talk about.
Oh my God, folks, did you hear this? Jesse is about to give you free advice. I suggest you tune in for stuff like that. That is going to be dope. Jesse, we'll do it in the second half. As always, Fat Nugs Magazine, Dustin and the team, thank you so much for all you do, not only for this show, but for this industry, for this cause, for this movement. If you're not a retail or brand partner, reach out to them right away to learn more. You don't get a bigger audience right now than anything in the Fat Nugs universe. These guys really are doing a killer job with the artwork you see in front of you here. Jesse, we're going to do it in the second half. Let's get into it here right after the break. Thank you all for joining us for the first week. Tune in next week to hear all about Jesse's free advice, guys. That's what we're going to call the second half. Jesse's free advice half coming up next. Remember, our goal here, remove the stigma, uplift the plant. Our goal, we hope it's yours. Have a great week.